Welcome. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do shim replacements for a TLR and a TLS. We're going to do one, both of the same procedure. So when you're going to do your shims on the S or the R, there's certain tools that you need because you need to take parts off the R and you need to take parts off the S. But for the purpose of this, when you're just going to do your shims, you need a feeler gauge. I've got a feeler gauge. I take all the bits off because it's a lot easier to handle. I just use the individual bits. You'll need an Allen key, 10mm. Another Allen key, 8mm. And 6mm. You need 10mm. You will need a torque wrench with the 10mm socket. Little 10mm socket. This mill that's a 17mm, so you need that as well. That's for your generator bolt. Vernier calipers, liquid paper, or a marking pen, preferably that you can see. White, I use this, it's easy. And hands free like a magnet. Trust me, you'll need it. And then an enamel pad and pen to record yours. It's a good idea. I use a whiteboard, but it's a good idea if you're going to record this, keep it in a folder, put a date on it, because then you'll know what the readings are down the track in a year's time when you want to do it again. But for the time being, they're the tools that you need to get into the tappets area. But I'll show you now what you need to do on the R and the S. I have the advantage of a spare engine. This is an S engine, so I'll try and show it there, but obviously I didn't take it out. I've still got the R there and I've still got the S behind it. But I thought for camera angles, you'll be able to see a lot better. One of the things that you need to know is when you're turning it, like a sports bike engine rotates in a clockwise direction. Excuse me. So what some people get confused about is when you have to get your cylinders to top dead center or TDC, it says anti-clockwise or clockwise. So for easy, this is how the bike is sitting in the frame. So there. So on the right hand side, the bike rotates in a clockwise direction. So if you think in a clockwise direction, and if you continue to doing a clockwise direction, when you get to the left hand side, it's actually anti-clockwise. So you've got to turn this generator to get it to TDC, and you don't want to be reversing the engine because the cams sometimes in here, the chains, they can kink. So you always want to go in an anti-clockwise direction. You can do small adjustments by doing it clockwise to get the line on, but we'll show you, but majority anti-clockwise on the left-hand side of the R and the S. So you're about now to start doing the engine. Okay, so just to recap, you've lowered the radiator, you've taken off the fairings on the R. This is for the R. You've taken off the fairings on the left-hand side. You've taken the battery out. You've disconnected the battery box. I think that's the other way around. You know what I mean? I take the tank off, and you've taken the seat off. You've taken the spark plugs out of both cylinders, and you've disconnected the cam sensor on the back rear cylinder. And I think that was it. And for the S was pretty much the same. So I have the fortunate, I haven't done this engine. I've done the R and I've done the S. So I thought I'll do this engine here, so it might enable to get better pictures and angles, plus I have to do it anyway. So one of the first things that you need to do is always, this is done when it's cold. The shim sizes that you need are 9.48, which is a TLR and the S, and then you've got the various sizes in increments. We can go into that later when we go through the shims. But the first thing that you want to do, excuse me, is take off this Suzuki Magneto generator bolt cover, which is, be careful because it's made of Suzuki cheese and you'll end up burning it. So let's do that first. Okay, so we're taking this off. This is with the 10mm Allen key. I can see that's going to be a problem. It's not even budging. Oh, yep. Be careful. It's a bit gunky in there. So our next thing to take off is the inspection cap. Now that's done with, I think it's an 8mm. Right, so we'll take that off. Oh. The manual tells you to wind it to the FT mark here, but it doesn't matter because you need to see the cam lobes on how they are. So I always just take this off first. Don't worry about the FT, but we'll take these off first. This is the front cylinder. This is with the, it's a 6mm Allen key. These have little black plugs on there. One of the reasons why I take the tank off is the tank's got little bushes where it clips down onto the frame. And some people forget about those, so the option is you either take the bushes out or you take the tank off. It's a lot easier to take off because when this is open and the tank is here, moving around can sometimes knock those out, bang, you're in a world of hurt. You don't have to take the tank off, you can just take the bushes out. They just sit in the rubber cappings that plug into the frame. Anyway, that's something to be aware of. So once you've got these out, then this will come out. Now, it has got a rubber seal on here. So that comes out, which exposes your tappets and your shims are in underneath there. So you have to take these off. And remember, this is the front. So this is where you can now turn it around to the FT mark. And it will show you these lobes here. I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can, how they should be pointing. And then you know you're at your TDC to begin. So we'll just do that. So what we'll do now is I'll show you what the inspection is. We've got the torch in here, I don't know if you can see that. So at the moment, where is it? That is basically, there's nothing there. Right, I'll show you what it's, when you turn it round to the FT mark and what steps are taken. So what I'm doing is I'm now turning the generator plug in an anti-clockwise until the FT lines up there. You don't have to go fast, you can just go slow. That was easy. So I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so you see there, that's the FT. Now you got to look at that at eye light. So you're trying to, get out of the way, phone. That's FT, and that middle mark in between it is lined up with that little notch there. So you can see that. So that's when you know that it's TDC. But to double check, What you also have to confirm is, if you turn this on, your lobes. They are pointing at roughly, 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. You must have them like that. If you turn this around to the FT in there, I can't even get it. If you turn that to the FT and these lobes here are not situated like that, then you need to return it anti-clockwise again until you get that. So once they're in this position here, you know you're at TDC. So the next thing that you've got to do is, this is where your pad and your pen come in. So you can see that. This is how I do it, sorry. Front cylinder, intake at the top, exhaust at the bottom. And you'll see left and right, and the arrow, that means forward. Now that's not a depiction of what that is. What that is that. So you've got, I'm on the left side, I'm on the right side, and the arrow indicates the engine is going forward. Intake at the top, exhaust at the bottom. I'll show you, because you need to know this in order to not stuff it up. So now we're going to measure the shims, right? So the first thing you want to do is measure your intake side. So we'll do that. Now, because it's cold, you're aiming for the shims to be in there between 0.10 and 0.2. So 10 to 20, 0.20 millimeter. The exhaust is 0.20 to 0.30. That's the ideal. So the ideal range for these shims is to aim for 0.25. I'll show you what I mean. So we'll test the size of these shims now. Because you want testing here, you're testing in the lobe, so that's got to be between 10 and 20. So we'll aim for, I'll get my feeler gauge and we'll aim for a sort of like a 15 and see what that comes up with. I don't know what shims sizes these are. Simple as putting it in that. So that's 15, so that's too tight. Let's go down to a 10. All right, it's not going through, so it's still out of spec. So I went through all my feeler gauges because it's 10, we're trying to get between 10 and 20. So I went down, so this is showing it's 9, it's 0.009. When I tried the 0.008, it wouldn't go through. So that is what you just want it to sort of go in easy, but just have a little bit of resistance in there underneath that cone load. So we'll record that being a measurement of 0.009 millimeters. That's what that says. So I'll now do the top one, remembering it's between 10 and 20. So you want it between the lobe and the bucket. 10 slides in very easy. So we'll go to the mid, which is 15. And it's not going in. So we'll drop down to 0.13. It's going in. Yeah, so 0.13. I'm 0.13. So to test that, if I wanted to do maybe a 14 just to get sure, but I'm happy with that. But I can test it out by adding my feeler gauge to be a 10 and a 4, 14. See if this goes in. No. So this one is in spec because it's 0.13. So I'll record those and then we'll go on to the exhaust side. So we'll now do the exhaust side, and we're aiming to get between 0.20 and 0.30. So we'll go for a mid, which is 0.25. No, that's 0.25. So we'll go 0.23. Nope. So the minimum is 0.20. And this is a 0.20. That doesn't even go through. So I'll go and change this to a find all these. So this is a excuse me, this is a 0.18 and it goes through. It's pretty stiff, so I'm happy with 0.18, but just to test it, I'll probably go see what happens when it's on 0.9. So we'll aim for a 0.19. So we'll use if I can find it, 0.15 and add a 0.4 to get 0.04 together, which gives us 0.19. Because we've got 0.18. No, so it's 18. So I'll do the other one and I'll record that too. So I've done those, and this is what I've got. So on the intake, on the right hand side, on the intake I had 0.09 on the left. It's got to be between 10 and 20, so that's not in spec. That one is, that's on the right hand side. The exhaust on the left hand side is 0.18 and 0.19. That's the exhaust has got to be between 20 and 30. So we'll now take the next step because this one is correct. These aren't. So I've got the current measurement, the shim, which we'll find out, and then the required shim to bring it into spec. That's on the front cylinder. So we'll now go and take the shims off to see what shims are in there. Another thing to be careful of is now your engine is open when you take these out. So you'll see that there's a little bushing up here. Grab that out of the way. There's that one, and it's in there, it goes in the case. So just make sure you've got those two out. And what we'll do now is we'll take off the intake. So as in relation to the liquid paper is placed on that for when you eyeball level with the top of the case there, and I just liquid paper the last tooth that I see. You can go by these little dots, but that's if you change it, because sometimes they're not even. And people will spend hours trying to figure out how to get them even, but I find this is just the easiest way to do it, because we need to take these out now. So I'll end up taking all 4 of them off. We're still on the front cylinder. We haven't, oops, wrong bloody side. We haven't altered that. It's still showing as well, you probably can't see it, but it's still showing as FT. You don't want to move this while you do this. So we'll take these off and let's have a look. Forgot to mention, although I plugged that up, plug this up here, because under these caps are those bushings, and sometimes they come out. So you need to take that out, those 2 bushings. by taking this top one out, and underneath here there's a little C-clip. I'll show you when it comes out. So when you take these out, the intake is not the same as the exhaust, so you won't have to worry about, you'll see when I take it out, but you just want to be careful when you take it out. You've got those C-clips, then you've got the buckets. That's where the shims are under. So I'll put this aside. And then we'll go on to we'll measure these and we'll take this off. So again, we've taken the exhaust side out. They've got those bushings in there. Grab them. Take your exhaust side out. And these are the C-clips I'm talking about. So there's one up there and one up there. They just sort of slide out. Oh, oh bloody hell. Oh. They're slippery, they've still got oil on them. That's why I suggest using pliers. So now we have the exposed shim buckets. If you're worried about these being messed up, one's got exhaust on it and the other one has got intake. So you know the exhaust's there and the intake's up here. So we'll get our little trusty magnet. This is where you want to do. So careful sometimes because the shim, you can see the shim there, will be stuck on there and you can lose it and bang. It's not too bad. So you'll just see the shim in there. So we'll recall what shim this is. Don't know if you can see it. So that says it's a 2. Hang on. Can you focus on that or no? So it says 2, oh, you can't see it. It's too shiny. It says 272. So I measured the shim. 272, which is what is written on that shim. Now that's out of the right hand side intake, and this was in spec, so we don't have to change this one. So I've put that shim back. You'll see it's 272, it's upside down. You don't have to do that, but the numbers want to be there so you can read. They face upwards. I'll put some oil on that. But another test that we do is the buckets. So you just want to make sure, clean it all out. I've just got some trans fluid in there because these buckets get hairline cracks, especially in, it seems to be the northern hemisphere, not so much in Australia. We don't get that problem, so there's no leaks there, so that bucket will go back on that shim. I do that with all the buckets. So I'll now take out the left-hand side intake bucket. $275. I don't know if you can see that, but that says that's a 275. That 275. So we'll record that. Okay, so I have already taken out my intake shims and I've recorded it. So this is what I found. So this is the chart that I had. So on the left hand side had 9mm, and that was the current shim, 275. In the right which was compliant 13mm and a 272. External, the exhaust side 18 and 19, and that was the present shim 288, 290. So what I've done is, if you go to the book, I'll show you here. So this is for the intake in the manual. So we'll do the first one, which says that it's 0.9 and it's 275 the current shim. So you go to 275 up here, 275, bring your finger down to 0.09. So my new shim is to be 2.70, which is my new shim. My shim here for the right hand side is 13mm, and it was a 272. So because it's a 272 and they have 5mm increments, I've gone to 270. And because that was 13mm, it is in compliance, so I'll just go down to a 270 anyway. For the external, what we'll do is we'll flip the page to the external side. This is the exhaust side. So the exhaust side is showing 18mm, 0.018 millimeters out, and the shim was 288. So if I go to, I'll bring it down to 285, and remember it was 0.18, so we'll go to the column 0.18. So my new shim is to be 2.80. My other one, the exhaust on the right hand side, was 0.19, and it had a 290mm shim. So we'll go to 290, go to 0.18 here, and it says my next shim to get is a 285. So they're my new shims to get: 270, 270, 285, and a 280, which will bring it up to spec. So I've already done the external on the, I keep saying external, I've already done the exhaust on the rear cylinder, and I've ordered these. So this will be part one. So what I'll do is I'll order all my shims, and then I'll go back and I'll show you how to do the rear cylinder. Okay, so I know this is a bit long-winded, but it's to give a basic idea on how to actually do it. So if you've got these, I might, if you haven't got this manual, see if you can sort of get a free sort of look in there. That's for internal. I keep saying internal, intake, idiot. And this is the exhaust side. So the exhaust side shows you there. So stay tuned for part two. I hope this was cleared. I know it's long-winded, but hopefully it'll help you out. I expect part two to occur probably in the next couple of days or a week. Thank you.